Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to CGNA's webinar series. Today, I'm especially excited to introduce you to new CGNA preferred vendor, Macurco. I'm Sarah Monteleone, president of CGNA. These webinars and trainings are important, and we appreciate you joining us today. Just a few housekeeping items that I need to share before we begin. All attendees will be muted during the webinar. This webinar will be recorded and made available on demand later on the CGNA Exchange site. Q&A time will take place at the end. Please type your questions in the questions box throughout the webinar, and the Macurco team will get to them after the presentation. There are handouts available to the right of your screen to download. CGNA Marketing will also be sending out a follow-up to today's webinar with those downloaded materials. And there will be 3 polls that we will launch after the introduction. So let's get started. Macurco Gas Detection is a company that specializes in providing gas detection and monitoring solutions. They offer a range of gas detection systems and sensors designed to detect various gases such as carbon monoxide, propane, and more. These systems are used in residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional settings to ensure safety by detecting potentially hazardous gas leaks or emissions. Macurco has a great track record and relationship with many of our CGNA distributors, and we're excited to offer this product line to our membership and help them grow their business as well. Today, I'd like to welcome Branden, Director of Sales, and Andy Turner, East Coast Manager. Gentlemen, thanks for putting this together and welcome.
Sarah, thank you very much to you and CGNA for the opportunity for Macurco. We're pretty excited about this. For those that were in Indianapolis, we thank you for your time at the tabletop, and we look forward to seeing this venture with CGNA grow. With me is Andy Turner. He runs the East Coast, basically Maine down to Florida, all the way over to what I would consider Michigan down to Mississippi. So for those of you that fall into that sector, he would be your main contact. We've got people throughout the U.S. And I think Sarah has the list for those guys, or you can reach out to Macurco directly. But today we're just going to be going through the product portfolio, the opportunity within the applications that you guys come across every day. And I know there is a poll that we are going to send out real quick. And it looks like it just opened, so I will give it a minute, and then Sarah or Harshal, if you want to let me know when to continue.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, Branden, those are the results for the first poll. So 67% are not familiar with Macurco product, and the remaining are.
Okay. And you just let me know when you're ready to go, Harshal.
Yeah, and the result of the second poll, like do you or your company currently work with gas detection products? 100% is yes.
Perfect. That's kind of what I was hoping. Awesome. So for the 100% that's in attendance, the gas detection portfolio has been ever growing with multiple applications over the past, especially 5 to 7 years. You'll have your, the vehicle exhaust and your common, carbon monoxide, a couple labs. But what we're going to go into today is a little bit more aggressive on the applications, common codes that we're seeing, a lot of controls, integrator type work that we're seeing come across our plate, and it's starting to spread throughout the country. So again, if there's any questions, I love interaction. I know they said there's going to be questions at the end. Feel free to type in any questions you guys have. We're all about education and VOC, insight from the field. But a little bit about Macurco real quick for those that don't know or aren't aware of what we do. On the screen right now is just our homepage. Everything we're going to be talking about is based off of our website. Macurco, we eat, breathe, and sleep gas detection. That's pretty much all we do. It is everything from the commercial fixed side. We have a little bit of residential stuff, and then we've got quite a bit of industrial stuff as well. The one portfolio that I want to talk about are the three bodies of our company. We have AIM Safety, which is the orange company on the left. That's a brand of portable gas detection. So for those that aren't familiar with this, anytime you have to enter a confined space, it is mandated by OSHA that you go in with a 4-gas monitor. This is that type of a product. The other types of products within this portfolio are single gas. We're commonly seeing a lot of contractors that work in boiler rooms, labs, wear personal monitors for carbon monoxide. That's a big one these days. And then the popular growing industry, the grow industry, cannabis, lettuce, tomatoes, a lot of CO2 as well. So there's a lot of flavors here for gas detection for the personnel itself. We see a lot of fleets, mechanical contractor type fleets, organizing their entire organization. It does help with the liability insurance. So if that's a concern, it's one of the key things to bring up with your insurance company. And then as you move over, you'll have a different product line. It's the fixed commercial product line. This is the primary talk of today's conversation. We'll jump into that here in a little bit, but then as well as the commercial will become industrial. Typically when we talk industrial, it comes with a classification, and that classification is class 1 div 1 or class 1 div 2. And typically when you jump from an application that's general purpose to a class 1 div 1, div 2, you'll start to talk track XP. So as we go through these applications, there are a lot of applications out there where, let's take a boiler room, for instance. A lot of the time you'll see a general purpose, but you do come across those same applications that do have that classification. So we ask that question a lot. And if you guys have questions on common applications, we can help you with that and then drive home a bill of materials pretty quickly. So on our website, as we progress, you'll see this scrolling banner here. I'm hoping that something kind of hit a light bulb as you saw different areas that are becoming very prevalent in our daily conversations here at the office. But the next tab we're going to show you, if I was just to click this applications tab, it would take me to this page. And on this page, just an insight, we have an engineering resources page where you can find your CAD drawings, your BIM files, riser diagrams, any kind of specification material that you need. The second thing, and this will be a primary topic of today's conversation, is this application guide. And then our common downloads page. This downloads page has, I don't know, 100 links to it, where you can go into certain data sheets, user manuals, etc. But on this specific page, this is our most highest traffic page. And the reason why, these are the everyday conversations that we're having. Pretty much every application on this page is code driven. You'll have industrial applications on the right, and there are hundreds of industrial applications. These are just the most common ones. And then your commercial residential applications. Today, we're going to hit on vehicle exhaust quite a bit. That is the ever popular one in the commercial sector. We're also going to be talking about the boiler mechanical rooms quite a bit. If there's any other application that you would like to talk more about, we have a lot of time after this call. I know this one's only set up for an hour, so we want to make sure we hit all the nuts and bolts as best as possible. So take a peek at this page when you get a chance. It's just the applications page on our website. Can give you a lot of material. And when you do click into an applications page, just as a reference, so if I was to click into vehicles, gas systems, most applications on that page do have its own guide towards it. So it talks about the gases that are prevalent, the codes that are associated with it, and then product placement, product choice, bill of materials type questions that we commonly get. These guides are just an absolute stunner for us in terms of the education process. We have so many different guides available, and it really answers a lot of the common questions. So moving forward into our, what we would call our all-encompassing application guide. The reason why this guide was put together, these are the everyday tools that we see. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm not really going to beat around the bush. The first pages, they really talk about the overview, but then you get into the gas types. Real quick, for those that aren't familiar, a flammable gas, really something that is explosive. So you're talking your methane, your propane, your hydrogen, your butane, things of that nature. And then you talk your toxic gases. Toxic gases are such as carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, things that are toxic, have the potential to kill you, have long-term health effects, really legislated These gases are very, very prevalent in today's society. And then moving forward, we're going to talk about the asphyxiants, which are commonly found in like lab work, hospitals, things of that nature, where inert gases play a part, such as helium, argon, nitrogen. So if you do any hospital work, you do any kind of lab space work, pharmaceutical work, the asphyxiant gas detection is huge. Moving into the applications, this is, again, the bread and butter of Macurco. This is kind of where we started growing our roots, was the vehicle exhaust sector. And within that vehicle exhaust sector, you're looking at a code-driven application in which any kind of application that has enclosed parking garages, so a lot of multifamily, that's the easiest one to talk about today. A lot of those structures are being built north and south. And within that, you're starting to see this code, and it's International Mechanical Code 2018. There is another version called the 2015 version. It all depends on what state has adopted the most recent code. Very, very few states have the 2015 version. Most states are 2018, where CO and NO2, so carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide, are needed. A very prevalent one right now is Florida, Texas, those two states in particular. Vehicle exhaust is hot and heavy because of multifamily and hospitality use. So hotels, multifamily apartments, those kind of places. And within that, you hear vehicle exhaust. Well, vehicle exhaust is all encompassing. It is more than just multifamily. We're talking car dealerships and maintenance bays. We're also talking ambulance and fire truck bays and loading docks. So if you're dealing with FedEx centers, UPS, USPS, any kind of big warehouse, they all have vehicles that can access those spaces, and this code still complies. That's the biggest thing. So the code reads as such: the only alternative to running fans or your ventilation equipment at a full speed every day of every hour is to install one of these systems. One of the more common questions, since this is kind of a niche product or an ever-growing product in terms of notoriety and knowledge, on the front end, Macurco is very good at what we do to help understand the basis of the front end system, meaning we can help put the system together. We have a team inside that lays systems out. We will give you a bill of materials based upon the size of the project. We have a guy or a couple gentlemen internally that can actually lay out the project as well, and it solidifies that bill of materials. Now, since we're not the engineer or the AHJ, that's one stamp that we put on each drawing to say, please make sure it's approved. It's based on manufacturer recommendations, and we go from there. All that type of material can be found in our application guide for vehicle exhaust. Andy Turner, I'll kind of throw it to you. Is there anything you wanted to add on the vehicle exhaust portion, as this is our most prevalent application?
Well, the only thing that I would add would be there is one state that is the oddball to this that will not, that has changed the code in that they will not allow the combination sensors on the wall, and that's Florida. You would have to, in Florida, you would have to put the carbon monoxide sensor down at breathing level and the nitrogen dioxide up at within 18 inches of the ceiling, because of their interpretation of what happens when nitrogen dioxide is introduced into the atmosphere. So just know that Florida is a little bit odd in that they're the only state in the country that will not allow our CX6 combo sensor.
Thanks, Andy. And to that point, one of the product things that we will talk about pretty aggressively, and when we get into the family of product, is that combo sensor. It's our top running product. It contains both a CO and a NO2 sensor. We'll get into a lot more of that product detail here in a second. Within this application guide, you'll see product recommendations based upon our portfolio or the family of products. Again, we'll dive into that here shortly. There's one big application that we're talking about. I'm going to expand the page here just a little bit. It doesn't involve just beverage dispensing, breweries, or wineries. It's kind of all encompassing. When you talk restaurants or commercial kitchens, anytime you get a beer, a soda, anything from a tap these days, the International Fire Code mandates that a CO2 detector become in place. So if you have a local Costco and you go get your $1.59 hot dog and soda, or $1 pizza or whatever it is, that soda machine where you're getting soda actually has a CO2 detector behind it where the tank is stored. That is code across the country. So any gas station, restaurant, beer or brewery, winery, those are all codes that come into play. In some cases, they are mandating that we control the valve of that tank. That's where the controls come in, mechanical comes in, and operates that type of application. Now, these are a lot of onesie twosies. I wouldn't recommend chasing these like crazy, but if you do land a Chipotle, a Costco type account, those are very, very prevalent, and those can be very, very large. But the code is very straightforward. It's any time you have a 100-pound tank or more of CO2, they're required to have a CO2 monitor. A 100-pound tank of CO2 is not very big. It's no bigger than a scuba tank on your back if you go scuba diving. It's that kind of to give you a reference point. The big one is the boiler mechanical rooms. This is pretty much the hottest ticket we have right now in terms of all of our applications. It started in the state of Texas about 3 years ago, and it's manifested itself to about 15 other states throughout the country. Almost every state is starting to implement something like this. And what it says is basically all CO or all boiler rooms that have a boiler or a furnace that's 200,000 BTUs or more has to have a CO shutdown system. So I'm going to backtrack real quick, and we're going to educate specifically on this application. I'm going to go into the boiler room application guide real quick. So to give you a reference point, a lot of the states that have this boiler code we've put into play just from a collateral standpoint, and we've transitioned that into an overall boiler guide. So in a boiler room, you have a combustible gas, methane, propane, natural gas. For those that aren't familiar, methane and natural gas are semi one and the same. But the one thing you got to concern yourself with is anytime you have carbon monoxide, it's coming from a explosive gas. It's coming from some type of a combustible gas. So carbon monoxide is the code-driven formula here. As you can see on page 3, we have the types of gases found, which is combustible and carbon monoxide. It gives a breakdown of, you know, the goods, the bads, the uglies. But then you get into equipment selection. In each state that we're seeing, the main premise of the state is at a certain parts per million of carbon monoxide, we are shutting down the boiler. What does that mean? It basically says at a low level alarm, that boiler is going to be shut down. And in most every state we're seeing so far, they're keeping that boiler shut down. It is not restarting. It's not coming back to life because the air got cleaner. It is latched. And what that looks like from a standpoint of a system is pretty straightforward. We met with pretty much all the inspectors in Texas 3 years ago, and we asked what this was going to look like from a code standpoint. And they said at the end of the day, the end user, the technician on site, needs to be able to operate this system without having the fire department or a contracting licensed company come out and do it as far as the initial alarm. So there is a boiler controller, which you guys will see right here on the top left, that we have built as a system. So you tie your CO detector in there, and this is honestly, it's a reset box with a bunch of relays inside. And what we're doing is once this detector hits that threshold, we shut the boiler down, it's latched. The end user can go in and reset the system. And in the event that it goes down into that same alarm status, then they know there's an actual carbon monoxide leak. It's not just a whim or a false alarm or anything of that nature. Horn strobes going off, and now you know to call your local technician, fire department, whatever that protocol is in that state. The hot and heavy tickets right now are Florida, Texas, Missouri, Georgia's doing it, New York's doing it. I mean, it's really spreading quite fast, and it's probably one of the more common topics of conversation within this kind of a code. Every state's a little bit different. It's got a little quirkiness to it, but for the most part, this type of a setup is what they're looking for. So moving forward, just to make sure we can cover all the product here in the future, a couple of the big ones that we're getting questions on right now are warehouses and battery charging. The old school batteries, lead acid, they off-gassed hydrogen every time they charged. The new school batteries in lithium ion are a very, very large talking point. We'll take a data center for a second. We do have the ability to detect hydrogen at any point. The kicker here is when you're dealing with lithium ion batteries and the thermal runaway, it off-gasses about 4% or 40% of volume of hydrogen. Well, at 4% of hydrogen, it's volatile, it's explosive. So what we do and what we can do is we can actually shut down power to the rest of that battery bank or the data center. So at the point of alarm, they're going to lose infrastructure A, but we can keep B, C, and D healthy. That is one way to operate one of these systems. If you deal with golf resorts, a big one is the golf cart charging bays that turn into their own mini parking garages, if you will. or even something like a forklift. If you're dealing with the warehouse aspect, you've got a lot of forklifts out there that are now battery charged as well. So these are just common applications we're seeing. The grow world is probably up there with our top 2 or 3 as well. There's a little bit of understanding with this one. We have an entire guide for the grow application as well. A big thing to understand is they are pumping carbon dioxide, which is CO2. It's the same gas that you exhale, into these arenas. And a lot of HJs and inspectors are enforcing the code that follows that beverage code we talked about earlier, because they have way over a 100-pound tank. The International Fire Code has made its imprint. NFPA is about to make their imprint. It's called NFPA 420. That is a real thing. That is a play on the application, but they will be coming out with NFPA 420 here in the next 6 months, I think, with a whole list of codes and regulations they have to follow that are not just security camera driven, but more controls, how they're operated, mechanical ventilation type stuff as well. And what happens here is the end users, they really want the carbon dioxide that's falling onto these plants to be set at a certain ppm level, so we can control the low side and the high side with our system, and give that end user the comfort that he's getting his 30% growth off of the CO2 dump that he's doing. Andy, is there anything you want to add on the carbon dioxide for grow and extraction?
We have several different carbon dioxide detectors. These units, and I'm sure Branden will get into it when we start talking about product, but the main thing is to use the right carbon dioxide detector for the application you're after. We have CD6B, CD6MC, and we have the CD6,
G.
what's the A?
G.
Yeah, G.
The MC, the B, and the G.
That's for the grow.
Yeah.
So just make sure you use the right carbon dioxide detector for the application you're working on.
So I'm going to skip ice rinks. That's kind of a glorified northern. You're in the Dakotas or Minnesota. We love hockey up here. It's a big thing. But just think of a Zamboni. Same thing as a parking lot, pretty much, with the Zamboni and then the ammonia, if they're using cold storage type application. One big thing that's commonly forgotten about is landfills. I'm going to take the state of California for a minute. I lived there for numerous years and didn't realize that the entire city of LA was built on a massive landfill. They call it the methane district, and basically any building that's built in that district has to have combustible gas detection. So that's a methane that's coming up from the ground from all the waste from a long time ago. And every building has a methane detector in there. The big thing is it needs to be UL 2075 for methane. We are coming out with several different options here in the next couple months. It's in the process right now, where combustible gas detection, if you're in a mall, an apartment complex, pharmaceutical facility, does not matter. They have to have combustible gas detection. So anytime you're dealing with landfills, no matter what state you're in, that is a big one, because we're not talking about just life safety at that point. We're talking about infrastructure safety as well. So a loss of life plus a loss of, the business itself. That's pretty much what we're seeing across the board with the methane and the landfills. I'm going to jump into some product real quick, just to give you an overview of how many are the different types of systems that we offer, so that now you can tie it back to those applications that you're thinking in your head. Most of the people that are familiar with Macurco have seen this product. If they've ever done our systems, it's a DVP 120 family. We have 5 different versions of this DVP series. We just came out with our 6th. It's our most robust. I'll show you that here in a little bit. But on this application guide, it breaks down the inputs and the outputs correlated with each panel. One big thing that we're really big on is making sure that we can fit any kind of a system. When I started 10 years ago, the only panel that we had as an offering was the 120. So we could only do 12 analog sensors. The biggest thing to understand, and for those that don't understand analog versus digital, analog is going to be a home run for every single sensor back to the panel. Not super efficient when it comes to labor, wiring, and conduit costs, but for those smaller jobs, it's a very easy install. And then you go into your digital systems. Those are the addressable, the daisy chain type systems, where now you can get up to from 87 sensors all the way up to 192. Those are just basic logistics when you're talking about our system type operations. We do have some capabilities where you can take Modbus, BACnet IP, Metasys, any type of communication protocol straight from our detector by changing a little adapter. I'll show you those here in a little bit. A lot of controls companies like to use those as directly into the BMS and skipping our control panels, which we're all for, as long as it's the detectors. That's what we're about. A big play right now is BACnet MSTP or BACnet IP. That's just the big question we have to find out. I know a lot of people are leaning towards the IP side of things. And in that case, right now, you'd have to lean on our DVP 1200, which we'll see in here in a second. From a product standpoint, in about 6 months' time, we will have an entire new family. We'll keep this family, but we'll go from the 6 series to what we would hopefully call the 7 series, which will have a very robust emphasis on refrigerants. Our 7 series is going to be launched with the refrigerant game. Here, I'm expecting it early Q1, mid Q1, and that would work with any one of our control panels as well. So the next generation of this product line is ever growing. So the refrigerants, the smart sensor technology, the lifespan, the UL listings, all of that stuff is going to be what we have currently and some moving forward. Within all of our detectors, the CX6, you'll have the nomenclature of the gas underneath it. So a CX6 is carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide. And then you go down the list and you can kind of get a gist of everything else. The GD6, when it says LEL, this one is dedicated for methane, propane, or hydrogen, one of those 3. The big key factor there is where you mount those detectors. Methane and hydrogen, they rise, they're lighter than air, so they go up to the ceiling, whereas propane's heavier, it's going to go to the floor. Within each one of these detectors, you have configurable adjustments. The key here is the configuration menu is very simple. It's a 2-button interface. The next gen product is going to be a very simple interface as well. And you can basically take each one of these categories and adjust it how you want. Now, the low level and the high level relays, they're going to stick at a 1/2 amp and 5 amp relays. Those are concrete relays, right? So dry contact, Form C relays. But then you also have the 4 to 20 milliamp output, which a lot of controls contractors use for automation purposes. Here's where it gets really, the next segment of our business here at Macurco has taken off, the expected sensor life. So when I first started, sensors would expire and people would just want to replace them. Well, now you have field replaceable sensors, which also entail calibrations. So for any of your customer bases that is looking for that continued RMR or that continued service contract type business, these type of units are very, very, very good. Andy, in a second, I'm going to give you kind of the floor here, but Andy Turner's dealt with a lot of companies that deal in multifamily, where they're dealing with 30 to 50 to 100 sensors a floor on 4 different floors. The amount of companies that are specifically geared towards the service side of this business is ever growing, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the market. The more service companies, the better. So we're always open to training and educating people on how to service. Mr. Turner, how have you handled on the East Coast, since that's a very, very heavy market for us, the service side?
We are basically leaning towards we're going out training technicians for our service providers. We've got a few on the East Coast already that have certification, factory certified technicians that can go out, service the product, test it, maintain it for the customers. And a lot of times the customers just don't want to fool with it. Even though it's a very basic process of calibration, it's not real hard. They just don't want to deal with it. So they want to hire somebody to come out and do it. So that's what these companies are providing. And most of the time it keeps the customers happy. If any of you guys are interested in getting trained and understanding that these guys are going to want to see you every 6, 8 months or so, at least sometimes only once a year, sometimes twice a year. Depending on that, if you're willing to do it, we can start sending people your way so you can assist them as well as on the service end of things. But it takes training. We'd have to sit you down, go through a training class, get you certified, get you a certificate saying you're certified, And I know in Florida, they aren't really keeping an eye on who's doing the service on these things. So in Florida, it's a bigger issue than in other places.
So to that point, this training that he's talking about, we offer, all of our trainings are free. We just got to find the time to do them. And we're pretty good and diligent about getting these trainings done in a timely fashion for you or your contractors, your team. The one thing that we've offered, and it's been a really big resolution for Macurco, is the trainings are free, and we offer a certified training within the product line. So what that means is an AHJ or a fire inspector or whatever kind of inspectors on site. We've gotten feedback that there's quite a few jurisdictions in the United States that require some sort of a certificate to say, hey, who said you could touch this product, or who's educated you on this product. We give a certificate that you know, it's just a name and a company, and it's all dolled up and looks colorful, whatever. But it does say on there, it's, you know, person A, B, and C has been trained to calibrate, commission, configure a Macurco gas detection system, and it's paid off tenfold, and we've done it for about 5 years. If that's something that you are looking at getting loyalty from your customers, or from a standard contractor standpoint, it's a really good way to get that ball rolling. Everybody that's has been installing Macurco systems for the past 3 years, I mean, we've probably trained them. Our certificate lasts about 2 years, so we follow up with them, say, hey, when's the next time you guys want to get trained? We're pretty diligent about that stuff. We love doing that stuff. It just creates a loyalty to the brand, and we get to meet the people that are installing the product. And at the end of the day, if the product's failing, we need to know. It's a big VOC in whatever capacity, whether that's, you know, our sensor life is too short, or, you know, we need to up our square footage somehow and talk to the manufacturer of the sensor itself. There's all those kind of VOC questions that we like to have feedback with. So diving into the types of systems, and before I do that, there was a question from earlier, the products for Canada, the ULC listed. So we are in the process of getting a lot of products UL 2075 listed, and that Canada listing is on the docket. The UL 2075 is primary. That's kind of the Bible for all gas detection. We will be the first on the market to have a combo CO and NO2 listed UL 2075 for each sensor. I'll show you that here in 2 seconds. In fact, let me go back and I'll kind of explain that. Currently, our product line, the commercial product series, they all have about a 2. If you see anything that's 2 years, 2 to 3 years, they're field replaceable. So this section here, we will have the first 4 to 5 year combo sensor on the market. That's going to be 2075, both CO and NO2. And the reason why I emphasize and is there are no sensors out in the market right now that have the NO2 UL 2075 listed, because you are not capable to list it to a UL 2075 if it's not above a 3-year sensor. There is a manufacturer that found a sensor model that works for 4 to 5 years. We are switching to that very, very quickly in a smart sensor capacity. So within the next 2 months, we should have that listing. And then right after that, we'll be looking pretty heavily into state-by-state codes, as well as the Canada listings as well. Going back to the types of systems real quick. So from the detector standpoint, the easiest way to talk about these pages here are, you can eliminate the fan photo, the horn strobe photo for anything you really want that can be controlled, so, or signaled. So you could take that horn strobe, substitute it for a fire security panel, a BMS, SCADA system, a fan, a valve, a damper, etc. But when we talk about our systems, it's very straightforward. We offer a low voltage and a line voltage option, meaning low voltage is the 6 series, line voltage is the 12 series. We see a lot of the 12 series being what you see here. You know, let's just take a multifamily apartment complex that's got single family garages outside of the complex, not underground. You'll see a lot of this. So it's 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4 sensors in an application. But the moment you get to 3 or 4, we start seeing a lot more go directly into the BMS, or we go into control panels. The benefit of having a control panel is very simple. You have one location where all the readings are found. All the detectors and all the controls are held out of this control panel. And again, there's multiple different control panels. It's really just based upon the size of the job and the sequence of operation. What are we controlling? What are we signaling? What kind of output communication is needed? And we go from there. When you get to the addressable systems, this is one big educational tool we train on with the contractors. the term daisy chain and T-tapping coincide together. What you see here is a daisy chain. It's from one to the next, to the next, to the next. If you were to take a T-tap, you're going to have a world of problems at our panel. Within the Modbus communication protocol, we are not capable to T-tap, so we just want to make sure that's pretty upfront and transparent. A lot of our panels these days offer either BACnet MSDP or, in this case, the BACnet IP. This is being the DVP 1200, our most robust control panel. You'll see this equivalent to a lot of what Honeywell dominates the gas detection spec. I'll be honest, they just crush it. This would be the equivalent to the 301C. We see a lot of that out there these days, and this panel is a very good retro for that. So within this product, in the handout category on the screen there, you'll see such thing as the data sheet. The data sheets are very straightforward. They're families of products, so the 6 and 12 series are all the same types of detectors. The one big difference between them is the ranges. So depending on the gas type, you'll have different ranges, different set points, and different lifespans. The one big thing that we've done a lot with is the square foot coverage area. We've done a lot of investigation of that and figuring out what we're capable of and what we want to kind of hold ourselves accountable for. Again, we take a lot of the diagrams and we'll do the upfront work with you, alongside you, to educate you along the way. Control panels are very similar as well. And what I mean by that is we've got an entire family that are all falling in the same bucket. It just matters what your inputs, what your outputs are, how many relays, what type of communication protocol you want. And we pretty much can tie in anything you want, from a horn strobe, a fan, a louver, a damper. We offer power supplies, calibration kits, etc. Mr. Turner, is there anything that I should hit on with the control panels or the detectors real quick?
Well, the only thing I would add is the T-tap comment is field T-tap. You can actually, in the control panel, have multiple wires, a couple of wires under each output terminal of the MRS 485. So, I mean,
Correct.
you can't put 192 like in that picture right there on one pair of wires, on one pair of communication wires. We're limited to 3 outputs in that controller, and each output will handle, 64
Correct.
sensors. So, just kind of keep that in mind. You're not putting all 192 on one pair of wires. It would tend not to work. So, other than that, it's fine.
So real quick, we got about 10 minutes left. I do want to touch on Track XP, our industrial section, just for a second, and the NEMA 4 aspect. But one thing I want to talk about is the calibration. So within each of our segments, we're going to have optional accessories, just like every other manufacturer. Pretty much any time that a company comes to us with a bill of materials, we will add the calibration kits. The common question that we get is, how often or when do I need to calibrate? The answer is pretty simple. For us, we recommend an annual calibration. Every single application is different. If you're talking about a parking garage, if you're talking about a boiler room, those are 2 different applications. The service agreement that the contractor has with the end user, it's really up to them. If they want to do 6 months, they want to do 1 year, if they want to do 18 months, it's up to them. Most of the boiler code enforcement that's happening these days, so if we go back to the boiler mechanical room, I'll just use Texas as the example right now. Per their state code, which is what, Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 65, they recommend, I think, every 18 months, if I'm not mistaken, where you have to calibrate the detector during that time period. Yeah, it says after every 18 months of installation, the detector needs to be calibrated. So we recommend annual calibration. If your companies are very big on service, it is a very nice way to have that extra added income. But it also keeps the detectors paired up to do what they're supposed to be doing. There's something called a drift, where sensors over time can drift a little bit, and the calibration just brings it back to normal. So if anybody has questions on calibrations or testing, anything of that nature, this is a very, very large market right now. It's probably one of the more talked about markets in terms of gas detection as a whole. Is just keeping the products updated, because it's no longer a set it and forget it scenario.
Branden, can I also add one thing real quick? The calibration, offering the calibration services is going to do 2 things for you. It's going to keep the equipment operating at its best condition, and the customer is going to be happy with the equipment if it's working right and not giving them problems. The other thing is it's going to keep you in touch with that customer, and it's going to get you in front of that customer more often, and he's more likely to call you when it's time to replace the stuff. So it just makes sense to build that reputation as somebody who's going to service what they sell. I mean, it's going to make you money down the road.
That is correct. That's 100%. And that's that loyalty we're talking about. And it just keeps people, especially contractors that aren't familiar with these types of products, just an FYI, they're supposed to have it, right? These applications are supposed to have this product. Somebody's doing it. And if they're running the project, it just gives them the avenue or the mind share, the market share to do that extra work. We always claim that we're the fries to the meal. We're never the big burger. We understand that and we know that, but we are all about educating to make sure that people understand that. So one big part that is very common in our world today is the industrial part. And no matter what applications you commonly deal with, you will run into a explosion proof or classified environment. We have product in a very similar capacity, from sample draw systems to your standard transmitters. Within this transmitters, there's a lot more flexibility. I'll show you this image here, where you can do a poly, we call it NEMA 4X. You can do a dual, you can actually do dual remotes where your sensors are no longer at the transmitter, they're up high or they're down low, they're in a space that's inaccessible, or you have your basic transmitter. The one big thing with this, the flexibility in this line is extremely important to understand, but we do have C1D1 or C1D2 product available at any time. The kicker here is anytime you deal with combustible gas detection in this space, you are also looking at flame detection. So now that we're talking about controls, flame detection is big for CO2 dumps or things of that nature. You might see those in big fire sprinkler type systems, but controls are everywhere within this type of product. And whether it's a valve, a fan, a louver, a damper, it doesn't really matter. There's a lot of communication protocols going on. There's just a large product offering that we have, and as long as you see it right now, it's in your head for later when it does come across, and that's really the whole point of showing you the Class 1, Div 1, Div 2 product line. Sarah and Harshal, I am speeding through as much as I can to show them, to get their light bulbs on. I'll kind of give it to you for questions, and Turner and I can answer.
Okay. I actually got texted a couple things, so if you don't mind, I'll just get started.
Sure.
One of the questions is, we've got quite a few of our distributors who work with contractors that do obviously restaurants, convenience store chains, and I know, Branden, you had mentioned that early on in the session. It looks like, I think your sensor model CD6B, it mentions on your website it's a standalone sensor or can be used in conjunction with the burglar fire alarm panel. How does that actually work, since that technically is two different installers?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So going back to the models, what you guys are referencing is this product here. So we have 3 different models within the carbon dioxide, and what pertains to the beverage code is the CD6B, which is in front of you here, or the CD6G. The G stands for grow, but it has the exact same footprint in terms of a range as the CD6B. So for those controls contractors that go out there and they're implementing these carbon dioxide sensors, we have a version for them. It's not listed here. It's more on the grow side. It's one of the more common questions we get. So if we go back to our commercial series data sheet, this guy right here, the CD6G, is literally the same as the CD6B. It's just a different type of output. It's got a 4 to 20 as well. So now that BMS can read what that reading is at all times. So we'll have an option for either market.
Okay.
Well,
great.
the CD6B is beverage only. It's pretty much going to be a standalone one sensor deal where you've got a small closet where you store your CO2 tanks. Basically, it's going to be like a standalone unit.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Whereas the G is more system oriented, and you can throw multiple sensors at it. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then a question on the personal protection monitor. I guess that seems to be hot. There's quite a few companies offering that type product line. It looks like that falls under your AIM safety Brand maybe can elaborate on that, and if there's any
Yes, ma'am.
mandates for that, or just some information on for the attendees where that's going to fall, in what they see with their customers in commercial buildings.
Absolutely. So real quick, I'll touch on the floor gas. This is the mandated by OSHA that anytime you enter a confined space. So by floor gas monitor, it's got 4 sensors in here. That's that little triangle effect. There's actually 4 sensors built into this unit. OSHA mandates that if you enter a confined space or what is deemed a confined space entry, you must have a floor gas monitor on you at all times. There's different versions of it. There's a pump version. There's the handheld version, which this one's a handheld. We do have a pump coming out very shortly. That's what this one is. So the gases it's looking for are carbon monoxide, LEL, which is methane, propane, hydrogen, basically any kind of combustible gas, hydrogen sulfide, and oxygen. So the reason why this is important is there's 2 models here. There's an IR model, and I'll show you here real quick. So it'd be called the PM400 IR or the PM400P. That's the only 2 options available. It's all found within our data sheet here. Most commonly seen is the P. It's called the cat bead sensor. It's a little bit more cost affordable. It makes sense in terms of if you have to meet the code. Going back a little bit, the bump cal station, these guys right here, you can calibrate and bump test these units within this station. It's really handy if you have more than 3 or 4 detectors where you can do all at one time. It tells you if they pass or fail. It's a really nice tool to use for just the maintenance of these types of detectors. Going into what's we've seen very popular are the single gas units. I'm going to show you 2 different variations. This one's the CO2 specifically, so if it's gray, it's CO2. But this unit right here has several different gases tied to it. And what I mean by that is it's different for each gas. So if you want carbon monoxide, it is the part number is PM100CO. If you want H2, it's PM100H2. It's very specific in that category. These units right here are what we call 2-year intosits, meaning once you turn them on, you do not turn them off. They last for 2 years, and you can have this display read gas concentration or lifespan left. And what and who are people wearing these? Any really fleet management company. So let's just take your local mechanical company that's got 15 trucks rolling out at all times. Each one of their personnel could be wearing a portable CO monitor. We see this a lot where it's PM100CO. In New York, I know they're doing a big push for this right now. A big integrator here in the US, national integrator, is doing the same thing, where they're basically enforcing all of their technicians that go on site and don't really know what they're walking into wearing these devices. It helps on the insurance costs, it helps on the life safety aspect, and it just makes the end user aware of what they're about to walk into. Andy, is there anything you want to add to that? You're on mute if you are.
Oh, as far as the single sensor monitor, it says maintenance free. That's it basically means that you're going to power that unit up when you get it out of the box brand new, and you pull a tab on the back of it, connects the battery, the system, the unit powers up, and it goes for 2 years, and then you basically throw it away. It's there's no field replaceable sensor or anything like that in it. That being said, the code or our recommendation of anybody's that sells these products is to bump test these units before you know you're walking into a known bad environment or a possible bad situation. These things are portable. They're very small. They get tossed on the dash of somebody's pickup truck, and it sits there for months on end, and then you're just going to pick it up and walk in there to a bad place. OSHA really recommends that you bump test them prior to walking into a known environment.
Sarah, does that help with those questions on that one? Sarah, are you there?
I think she might be muted. Yeah, to all the attendees, if you have any further questions, please type them in the questions box. Our presenters are more than happy to answer them. While we wait for more questions to be typed in, I had a quick question about training, like Andy briefly mentioned about training. So our members do also conduct trainings at their locations. So is there a possibility of Macurco conducting those trainings at our member locations?
Absolutely. What we need is just give us time, date that works for everybody, every party included, and we can be an in-house. We can do webinars. I've tasked. I don't know, Andy. What was our number at the beginning of the year for trainings? Like 400.
Yeah.
It was a big number, and last year we just had training after training after training, and those trainings paid off to keep us busy enough this year where I don't know if we're going to hit 400 or not, but yeah, we want to train. That's the whole goal.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's great. We'll certainly reach out to the membership and get their feedback too on this.
Okay.
Okay. Looks like we do not have any further questions. Sarah, I'm not sure if you're able to hear us, but don't know if you have any more questions.
Hey, Harshal, anything else?
Oh, no. Yeah. So, yeah, we do not have any more questions.
Okay, great. So we'll follow up today's series with an email to everybody. I want to thank Andy and Branden for your time. And if anybody has any other questions and do not have a Macurco contact that you're familiar with, CGNA will be happy to get that contact for you, or you can reach out to Macurco directly.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time and your attendance.
Yep, great. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.